be a recorded presentation so people can watch it later in case they couldn't come today. It'll be shared on our informational webinar page, which I'll be getting out to everyone shortly, as well as a list of upcoming webinars. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We'll address them towards the end of the presentation. I'd like to introduce Cristher Estrada Perez from the Student Loan Fund, or SLF. Cristher comes to SLF with over 5 years of experience fighting for equality and racial justice in K-12 education. Before joining SLF, Cristher served as the Program Evaluation Strategist at Center, Race and Equity in Education, where she had the opportunity to incorporate her dedication to racial justice, education, research, and storytelling. Cristher is guided by a deep understanding of intersectional and compounding forms of institutional oppression, anti-racist practices, decolonization, and collective liberation. She has a bachelor's degree from the University of St. Joseph's and a certificate in education program evaluation from Georgetown University. Joining her today is Edwin Castano, an HR generalist from CT State. Edwin will be handling questions that are specific to CT State, and we also have Yolanda Wang from the Student Loan Fund. She'll also be helping with the Q&A portion of the event. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Cristher. And you are now the presenter.
Thank you so much, Alexa. It is an absolute pleasure to be here with you all today. If you bear with me for 1 second, I am going to share my screen to make sure you all can see the presentation. Let's see, can you all see that? Alexa, can you see that? Beautiful. All right, we are so excited to be here. My name is Cristher Estrada Perez. I am a first-generation college student, a woman of color, and like many others, I have about $80,000 in student loan debt, and I am also the executive director of the Student Loan Fund. Before we get started, I just wanted to let you all know that the information provided in this session does not constitute legal, tax, accounting, or financial advice. All information, content, or materials shared by us at SLF are adapted from trusted resources and only for informational and educational purposes. I can answer general questions, help you gather all the necessary information to fill out your PSLF application effectively, and then direct you to expert resources like the Institute of Student Loan Advisors, who we have a deep partnership with. Before we get started, I wanted to sort of go over the agenda so that you know what to look forward as on our time together. First, we'll talk a little bit about who is SLF, who is the person, the organization standing in front of you sharing information. We'll do a little bit of information on our student debt advocacy and organizing, but very quickly, and then we'll move into the bulk of the presentation, which is first we'll talk about Biden's cancellation, and then we'll talk about the PSLF, or the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Waiver, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, and the waiver we are right now in. And as Alexa said, we'll have space for Q&A at the end. We'll make sure we give enough spaciousness for that. So who is SLF? The Student Loan Fund is a borrower-led organization made up of individuals like you and me who are directly impacted by student loan debt and who are committed to restructuring lending systems and practices negatively impacting us, our families, and our communities. We are the only organization in Connecticut advocating on behalf of more than 500,000 Connecticut borrowers who collectively owe more than $16 billion in student debt. We are entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders, artists, truck drivers, teachers, professors, social workers, chefs, right? Just like the other 45 million Americans nationwide carrying $1.8 trillion in student debt. We are guided by anti-racist principles and dedicated to collective liberation. A little bit about who we are. On a national level, we are advocating for student debt cancellation. And on a local level, we are advocating and demanding that Connecticut funds the Student Loan Ombudsman's office. Appointing an ombudsman has been required by law since 2015, when Connecticut passed the first borrower Bill of Rights in the nation. Student loan borrowers struggle to find access to free and expert student loan debt advice and counseling. Lack of funding for this role and other support systems to navigate the student debt repayment maze really does leave borrowers at the hands of scammers looking to take advantage of the student debt crises. It also forces organizations like us to use our limited resources to create spaciousness and pathways to access that free expert advice that borrowers can trust. Now, I'm about to share a lot of information. Do not feel like you have to remember it all. This will be recorded and we can direct you to all available resources that can help you. You are not alone. There are over 500,000 student borrowers in Connecticut just like you and me, and our path to liberation is together. How do we do our work? We are borrower-led. We develop leaders, we build power, and we organize collectively to make change. Now, let's talk a little bit about, now let's get started to the meat of why we're all here today. Let's first talk about the Biden cancellation. Just a few months ago, President Biden announced that the Department of Education will be canceling up to $20,000 of student loan debt for people who use Pell Grant to pay for college, and up to $10,000 in student debt cancellation for all other federal student loan borrowers, as long as a borrower earns less than $125,000 per individual and $250,000 per household. That's the cutoff. There will be an application process that is live right now, so please go to studentaid.gov website to apply today. The application is relatively quickly. It looks a little bit like this. Two important things that you should know is that you may be eligible for both, provided that you meet both of those criteria. However, if you have a commercially FFEL loan, you are not eligible unless you consolidated before September 29th, right? And if you need help figuring out what kind of loans you have, no worries. We're going to go through that together so you can see how to look that up using your studentaid.gov portal. This is a historic win for organizers and advocates on the ground who've been working tirelessly to move the needle on the student debt crisis. This announcement will provide critical relief to millions of people who are struggling with student loan debt, with as many as 20 million people seeing the benefit of their student loans wiped out completely or partially. With the proper implementation, this announcement is a meaningful step towards alleviating the crises, but much more is still to come. The beta is up. Around 8 million people have already, 8 million to 12 million people have already applied. And so we'll drop the link to the application on the chat so that you all can go there. It takes about 5 minutes to complete. Now, let's talk a little bit about why we are all really here, which is the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. First, we'll do a little background on the program, and then we'll go into what it is that you need to know to apply successfully. Congress created the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program in 2007 to help public service workers struggling with student loan debt and to ensure that future students and graduates would not be deterred from entering public service by their student loan balances. Simply put, PSLF is the promise that if a borrower works in public service and makes 120 payments, which is roughly about 10 years of service, the remainder of their debt will be forgiven. For the regular PSLF program, which was created in 2007, there were 4 eligibility requirements. You have to have the right type of loan, which was a direct loan. You have to have the right type of repayment plan, which is usually an income-driven repayment plan. And you have to reach 120 payments to receive full cancellation. And of course, you have to work for a public service employer that in your case you do. 501c3 organization, government agency, state, colleges and university, all of those places apply. And it doesn't matter what you do in that place, it matters that you work there. And we'll go into the eligibility more in one bit. Before we move on, actually, so let's talk a little bit about the requirements. So originally, you needed to have a specific type of federal student loan called a direct loan. If you did not have this loan, then all of your payments would not have counted towards Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. However, October 6th of 2021, the U.S. Department of Education announced a limited waiver. This waiver expands the rules of the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program and makes payments that you made in the past that may be eligible and considered for PSLF, even if they normally wouldn't qualify. So what does this mean for you as a borrower? It means that you might have an increased number of qualifying payments. It means that you can include periods of qualifying employment that didn't previously count because you may have been in the wrong loan type or in the wrong repayment history. This is particularly true if you have already applied for debt cancellation and were denied previously. Want to make sure you do that again. And it also allowed participants to seek cancellation on older loans previously ineligible by consolidating them into a direct loan. And we'll go into what that means and what the steps you need to do to make that happen, right? But those are the big changes. So let's go over that one more time. What's new? So from now on, you are going to get credit for all previous loan types, provided that moving forward, if you do not have a direct loan, you consolidate into a direct loan. So if you have a FFEL loan or a Perkins loans, right, those have to be consolidated moving forward. Any payment plans made under any payment made under any payment plan now will count. The only thing you have to do is make sure that in the future, you enroll in an income-driven repayment plan, which is usually what's appointed for the PSLF program. If you were in the military, military deferment and forbearances count. And current employment is not necessary. You will be given credit for previous employers. So anytime from October 1st, 2007 to your current employers, you can get all of those years. You could get credit for all of the years that you were working since 2007 in an eligible employer and making payments towards your student loan debt. Now, let's pause for a second and talk a little bit about what does it mean, what happened during COVID-19. COVID-19 and the CARES Act made minor changes to the public service loan forgiveness requirements for some borrowers. During the pandemic, millions of borrowers have had their payments suspended since March of 2020. These payments are scheduled to return January of 2023. For borrowers who receive this payment pause, each month of suspended payment by the federal government is going to count as if you were making qualifying payments, even though you weren't physically making them, right? So even though no actual payment was made, you will get the credit for these last 2 years. So at the very least, if you're a newer, if you just graduated and you're newer to public service, at the very least, you would have those 2 years under your belt. Provided, right? So it will still count towards your 120 payments, provided that you worked full time or had multiple qualifying part-times, and that you meet the employer eligibility. Please remember that the pause ends on January 2023. So as you are consolidating and entering your application for PSLF, you want to make sure that you are also in an income-driven repayment plan so that you are ready to make that first payment at the end of January or whenever it comes. Now, unfortunately, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program has not worked as intended. In 2017, as the first group of borrowers reached 10 years of payment since the program began, the initial rejection rate was 99%. Only around 800 applications out of 90,000 were approved. Folks were denied because they had the wrong loan type or weren't in the right repayment plan, and other technical reasons that had absolutely nothing to do with whether they actually did 10 years of public service work. So if you've been denied before, do that again, right? Apply again. This was in large part because these public service workers were never told about specific program requirements or were incorrectly told that they were on track toward forgiveness when they were not. This was a huge problem and an incredible failure for the public service employees that the program was meant to help. Many folks took out the debt specifically because they were told to become teachers or educators because they were told that after the 10 years or 120 payments of affordable payments, the remainder would be forgiven. And I think you will hear my audio, but next we're going to hear a quick 1-minute video from our friends at the Student Borrowers Protection Center talking a little bit more about this just to contextualize where we are. I think you can hear sound. So if you can't, I'm sorry, there are closed captions.
The government has depended on these private sector companies called student loan servicers to give people advice about how to repay their student loans going back decades. Sometimes these are private sector companies that own federally backed loans. Sometimes they're contractors for the government. But in both cases, law enforcement officials of both parties, going back multiple administrations, have alleged that these companies routinely provide bad advice to people. And in particular, there's one scheme called forbearance steering, where a company tries to rush a borrower off the phone because it costs more money to provide them counseling. And in doing so, puts them in a repayment option that adds more cost to the debt and knocks them off track from loan forgiveness. And I do want to cite in particular one company, Navient. Navient was alleged by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to have added $4 billion in unnecessary interest charges on the backs of more than 1.5 million of its customers over the course of the better part of a decade. That litigation by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is still ongoing, but earlier this year, Navient did enter into a settlement with a bipartisan coalition of attorneys general led by attorneys general from both of your states, the Republican Attorney General of Ohio and the Democratic Attorney General of Pennsylvania. And in that settlement, these bipartisan attorneys general allege that Navient engaged not only in this forbearance steering scheme, but knocked borrowers off track as they tried to maintain affordable loan payments under income-driven repayment over the long term.
Awesome. So essentially what the department's waiver does is give public service workers credit towards loan forgiveness, regardless of what type of student loans they had at the moment, and for any period of time since October 1st, 2007, when the program began. And as long as they were in qualifying public service employment and their loans weren't in default, deferment, or forbearance. And there's an asterisk next to that we'll get to. So even for months in which borrowers didn't actively make a payment, as long as the loan was in repayment status, they can receive credit, and these credits will be retroactive. So borrowers can receive credit for past payments that were previously ineligible. So in short, for any month since October 1st of 2007 that a borrower had any type of federal loan, worked for a qualifying public service employer, and wasn't in default, deferment, or forbearance, that borrower can receive credit towards the 120 months required for loan forgiveness under PSLF. Now, like PSLF, the income-driven repayment program we just mentioned has not lived up to its promise of delivering debt relief either. So in April of this year, the Department of Education announced that it would review the income-driven repayment program and count some periods of forbearance and deferment. So this means that periods in which a borrower had 12 consecutive months or over 36 cumulative months, they can receive credit for those months. In addition, the department will be counting some periods of deferment prior to 2013. So in some cases, periods of forbearance and deferment will actually count towards your 120 credits needed for forgiveness. However, we're still waiting on more details about this IDR account adjustment. What does that mean for you? The good thing about all of this is it will only mean more qualifying payments for some borrowers, and no one will lose credits based on this reconsideration. Now, let's talk a little bit about borrower sharing stories. This last year, over 50,000 borrowers like you and me submitted testimony to the Department of Education, basically saying that the program was not working. And it was because of borrowers like you and me that the waiver exists today, right? So I wanted to sort of call that out because it really has been a disservice. And so the waiver is attempting to correct that error. So we're happy to share how to make sure you know what it is that you need to know. So on the left side, you can see the steps to public service loan forgiveness. First is applying for the program. You want to determine your employer eligibility. Now, if you work at this institution, you're already eligible, but past employers might also be eligible. You want to certify employment by having your employer sign that document. You want to determine what kind of loans you have to make sure they're qualifying loans. And if they're not and you need to consolidate, well, how do you do that? We'll go through that together. What you will need your employer identification number, which I believe they've been provided to you, but you can always reach out to find out what that is. You will also need your studentaid.gov username and password. And although you're not going to need it for the application, we highly recommend that you have access to your loan servicer username and password. And I see questions coming in. This is wonderful. Keep bringing them up and we will make sure that we get to them at the end. All right, so how do we apply? Let's sort of overview what needs to happen. You are going to generate your application on the PSLF help tool before October 31st. By doing this, the education department is actually going to count your application in on time, even if it's pending your employer's signature. Now, we are hoping that you can get everything by the 31st, but if not, don't panic. As long as you generate that application using the PSLF help tool, you're in a good space. To generate the PSLF application using the PSLF help tool, you must add all employers that you want to get credit for and get to the end of the application where you will be able to download a PDF of the application. And finally, if you need to consolidate, you will use the direct consolidation loan application that you also will find at studentaid.gov. Now let's figure out how to do this all together, right? So we know the steps. Now, I want to repeat this, and you'll see me repeat this a couple of times. It doesn't matter what order you do it in, just do both before October 31st. Generate that PSLF application and consolidate if you need to consolidate. So the first step is confirming whether your past and present employers are qualified public service or employers. Because this is the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, all public service workers who want to benefit from the PSLF program should confirm which of their employers since October 1st of 2007 qualify. This requirement hasn't changed, right? Just now you will be eligible for previously ineligible payments that will count in your credit, that will count towards credit for your 120 payments. These employers include government employers, federal, state, local, and tribal, and any nonprofits that have a 501c3 exempt code. There are certain other organizations nonprofit employers who are also eligible, but the best way to figure out if your organization is eligible is by using the PSLF help tool. So remember, you need to be either 30 hours per week or full-time or whatever your employer's definition of full-time is, or you can take multiple qualifying part-time jobs. Each time an employer signs and certifies your employment, the federal government will look at your eligible payments and your eligible months, and they will give you credit towards that ultimate cancellation. So how do we use the PSLF help tool to generate that application? The first thing that you're going to see is you're going to log into studentaid.gov. You're going to go to Manage Your Loans, and under Manage Your Loans, you're going to find the Public Service Loan Forgiveness tab. When you get here, you're going to go to the main page of PSLF. This is a wealth of information. It could be a little overwhelming, but it is a wealth of information. You will go under Public Service Loan Forgiveness PSLF Help Tool that you can see in red. When you get there, you will be able to add each employer on its own. You want to enter your employer identification number, as you can see there. You can select if they are your current employer, and you want to have your employment start date or end date, or as approximate as you can get. You're going to hit search. When you hit search, you are going to get this box sort of show up. And so this is confirming your employer. This person, this example, the person was Googling state of New York. And as you can see, the state of New York is an eligible employer. So it shows up as green. There are only 3 ways that you will get an answer from this database. Either it will be green and it's eligible, it will be red and it is ineligible, or nothing pops up. If nothing pops up, it does not mean that your organization is ineligible. It just means that no one from that organization has applied for PSLF and the government has not made a determination on that employer's eligibility. So it would actually give you an option at the bottom where it says add manually, and you will do so. Add it manually and keep going. That will also count as if you turned it in on time, pending that employer verification eligibility, right? Once you pick every single one of your employers, you are going to hit continue. This is going to ask you, in the next page, is going to ask you to confirm personal information that will be pre-populated because it is your own studentaid.gov dashboard. So it will pre-populate your information. It'll generate an employer certification form that looks like this. The only difference is that it will be pre-filled by the PSLF application. Your employer has to sign section 4 with their name, their title, and the date, right? One of the things that we know is that the best way is to do a wet signature. We can't do Adobe signatures because they've been rejected in the past. So the easiest way, there are other ways, but the easiest way to do it is to send it in, have them print it, sign, and then scan it back to you. Or of course, you can show up to your HR department, depending on how big it is, right? But those are the various ways. When you generate this application, when you get to the end of the application using the PSLF help tool, it'll say download the PDF, and that's how you will be able to download it. You got to get to that stage where it tells you to download because that's how it saves under the studentaid.gov portal. And in fact, you can go under your documents and see that the PSLF application has been saved, the date and the time, right? So that's really important. Now, again, that is what you have to do before the 31st. Generate that application so that the federal government knows you're intending on sending in your forms with your employer's signatures. Now, when you're submitting your PSLF applications, there are 3 ways to do it. You can fax it to Mohila using the number that you see here. You can mail it to Mohila. I always say keep a couple of copies for yourself so you know you did it. And if you already have Mohila as your servicer, you can actually upload it into the Mohila dashboard website. So again, mail, fax, or if you're lucky enough to already have Mohila, you can upload it into the Mohila website. Now, that is sort of, it doesn't matter what order you do it in, but that's one of the things I would advise for you to do first. And it's usually what takes a little bit of the longest. The next thing we're going to do is, well, Cristher, how do we determine what kind of loan do we have, right? A lot of us don't know. There's been many years, right? So you're going to go to studentaid.gov and you're going to log in one more time. And you're going to see your main dashboard where on the left, you'll see your loans in blue. And if you have grants, it will be in green. You will be able to view details or download data. When you click view details, this is what you're going to see. In this example, this person has a direct consolidation loan. That means their loans are already eligible for PSLF, and this person doesn't technically have to do much. They have to do anything else. They don't have to consolidate. However, if it says Perkins, FFEL loans, Stafford loans, those are the loans that will need consolidation. It doesn't matter if it says subsidized or unsubsidized, you're looking for the word in front of that. FFEL, Perkins, Stafford, direct, right? So it will either say direct consolidation or direct loan. Those are the only eligible ones. If not, you have to consolidate. I also recommend that you all download data. A lot of shifts are happening in the Department of Education. Servicers are ending their contract with the federal government to service student loans. So your accounts may be shifting to other servicers. Download a copy of your data for your own records for you to have. Also, when you download, this is what it's going to look like. As you can see in this example, this person has an FFEL consolidation loan or an FFEL Stafford loan. So that person will have to consolidate to become eligible, and they will have to consolidate before October 31st. Now, we've mentioned the word consolidation a lot. Well, what is it? A direct consolidation loan allows you to consolidate multiple federal loans into one new loan, and it's going to have a fixed interest rate based on the average of the interest rates on the loans that are being consolidated. Now, for the PSLF waiver, only direct loans are eligible, like we've said. So if you have an FFELP or Perkins loans, you got to make sure you consolidate those using the consolidation application. One of the things we want to highlight to you is that when you consolidate, your interest will actually compound into your principal, making your loan bigger. Unfortunately, you have to consolidate to be eligible for PSLF, but that is something that does happen. Your interest rate will be added to your principal, and then you will be told what your new interest rate will be. If you have an older loan with a secure interest rate, you may also lose that, so that's worth noting. Unfortunately, if you don't have a direct loan, you kind of have to consolidate to be eligible for PSLF. And ultimately, since we're asking for cancellation via PSLF, you want to make sure that it should be okay, and also make sure that you get an income-driven repayment plan for yourself. And we'll talk a little bit about that. All right. We've talked about consolidation and we're going to go through how to do that, but let's talk about the right type of repayment plan. You have to get on the right type of repayment plan, which is usually an income-driven repayment plan. These can be as low as $0 per month, but it really does depend on family size and income, right? Income-driven repayment plans include the ICR. If you have a Parent Plus loans, those are usually, ICR is the only one that you're usually eligible for. Revised Pay As You Earn, income-based repayment, and Pay As You Earn. The consolidation option will give you an option to enroll in your IDR program, right? And you'll be able to see, and we'll see it together, what each of those are. If you are a person who needs to get in an income-driven repayment program, but you do not have to consolidate, there's actually an application called the IDR application on studentaid.gov that you can also fill out. You don't have to do this one by October 31st, but you want to make sure you do it before, definitely before the repayment starts. Now, let's figure out, well, how do we use the application to consolidate our federal loans? First, you're going to go to manage your loans and you're going to go to consolidate my loans. This is what you'll see at the beginning. And when you can actually also see a demo of what's expected of you and what you'll need before you get started. But once you log in, it will have you select the loans that you want to consolidate. At the bottom of the page, it will give you the new amount of your total loan, and it will also give you the interest rate or your new interest rate. So you'll be able to see that right before you hit next. So remember, select all the loans that you want to consolidate. And then at the bottom, you will have your new total loan and your new interest rate for you to view. Next, you're consolidating, so you'll need to pick a servicer who will consolidate for you. Honestly, you can pick whoever you want. If your goal is to get into PSLF, Mohila is the servicer that is in charge of public service loan forgiveness. So to make it easier on yourself, just pick Mohila because your account is going to get transferred there anyway for the most part, but you can pick whoever you want. The key here is to remember who you consolidated with, because if you have questions about that, you have to call them. You have to call a particular servicer. Once you select your servicer, you are going to get the option, or you're going to be asked to enter your tax information, your adjusted gross income, your family size, and your filing status. It's important that you have your taxes from last year with you if you've done them. You actually can link to your IRS directly, so all of the information is downloaded for you. The IRS link, similar to when you do it with FAFSA, is a little sensitive. So you got to make sure that everything looks exactly the same as they show up in your tax documents. But you'll be able to link those two together so that all of the most concrete information gets uploaded. At the bottom of this page, you're going to see what you see here, which is it'll allow you to select your repayment plan, and also will be able to see the details of your repayment plan. So in this example, the person who was searching is eligible for the standard and the graduated. There's a toggle right above this that says show me PSLF eligible. That's what you want to click, and it'll give you the options. As you can see in this example, there's like a little cross in blue. You can actually click that and it will give you an explanation of what each of these programs are. Again, income-driven repayment plan is going to be usually the best bet for borrowers in, not all payment plans are accepted by PSLF. Income-driven repayment definitely is. But you'll be able to see which one and you'll be able to select the ones that you want. Okay. When you are done here, it will have you sign and it'll have you, it's automatically sent to the federal government. You do not have to send anything in like you're doing with your PSLF application. The only caveat is if you are married filing jointly, it might ask that your spouse also create an account if they don't have one and sign off on the consolidation. And that's because you're married filing jointly, your husband or partner, your husband, wife, or partner has to make sure that they sign, but the application will prompt you and will tell you what to do. So just know that that might be an extra step. Also, at the bottom of this application, they're going to ask you for 2 or 3 references This is not their credit, it's just name and then contact information. So I just want to make sure you knew that. It's not for credit purposes, it's just references, but you will need 2 or 3. Now, I just shared a lot of information, and so we're going to drop in the chat the links, but we do have weekly office hours. We might be extending them as well next week. But as of right now, we are here Monday through Thursday, 5 to 8 p.m., and Saturdays, 1 to 4. We can answer general questions, but most importantly, we can put you in contact with the Institute of Student Loan Advisors who are partnering with us. And this is what they do all the time, right? Their goal, they're a 501c3 organization whose job is to answer questions and advise borrowers ethically and free. So we've partnered with them to make sure that you have access to that service. But feel free to drop into office hours and we'll drop the link so that you have that. We also have weekly workshops that are exactly what I'm doing right now. And those are the dates of the remaining workshops before the October 31st deadline. Finally, we've consolidated, we've applied, right? We've downloaded our application. Now what? Once you complete your PSLF application and you generate it, may do that before October 31st. You will then sign, your employer will then sign your PSLF application, and then you will turn that into MOHELA. MOHELA will determine your loan eligibility. They're going to look at your loan and go, yep, direct loan, or they've consolidated, great. Then they're going to transfer your loans to MOHELA because, again, they are the servicer in charge of the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. MOHELA will then determine employment eligibility by looking at your PSLF application. And then they're going to determine from all of the years that you've been working and paying, how many of those are qualifying payments. One of the things I will let you know is that we have been told that it will take about 90 days, if not longer, for borrowers to hear back, especially the closer you get to the end of the month, right? But right now they're saying there's around a 90-day wait or lag time between submitting the application and hearing something back. You will hear something back, usually through your servicer. They'll send you an email through your servicer. So you want to make sure you're checking your servicer dashboard often. And that's why you need the servicer username and password. You don't necessarily need it for the application, but it is good to have it so that you can check on the status. And I believe if you have MOHELA, they've added like a status checker as well. There's a place in MOHELA that you can go and there's a status check. And I think that's relatively newer. But we're excited that they did because we've seen some folks not know what's happening with their pending application. But just do your part, put it in, submit it before the 31st. And so that everything else will be on their end. So I'm going to pause here. I went over that a little bit quickly, so I'm a little nervous about that. But I want to make sure I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I want to take the questions that are coming up. Let me see if I can figure out how to stop sharing. There we go. And so Yolanda, I see that there might be some questions. Are there any questions that came up?
Yeah, so there were 2 questions that came up during the presentation. So I think Medjine Bright asks, what do you do if after submitting the application, they say you only made 3 payments, even though you have proof of more payments?
That's a really good question. So they are saying that you only have 3 payments, even though you've made more. So one of the things that's going to happen is that they're going to provide them on a rolling basis. So you want to, number one, make sure that all of those employers that are eligible, that you get that certification signed and submitted. If you've already done that, then they are doing it on a rolling basis. So either A, they may not have gotten to them, right? Or there may have been some deferments or forbearances on their end that might not sort of like equate with what you have on your records. So when that happens, you can actually talk to your servicer and ask for a copy essentially of your records, and they should be able to provide that. And so you can cross-reference what you have versus what they have. But make sure that your certification, your employer certifications for all of those employers are in and that they've received those.
Yep, thank you, Cristher. And Michelle asks, I just retired on July 1st after working for the college for over 26 years. Can I still apply?
Absolutely. So if you this is specifically good for folks like you. If you've been in public service for 25 years, like in your case, and you just retired, you're going to get credit for all of the years you've been in public service since October 1st, 2007. And as long as you were making payments, and you were in a public service employer and you submit that certification, they will retroactively give you credit for all of those years that you were in public service. Unfortunately, you will not get credit for any work before October 2007 because that's before the program was created.
Yep, thank you. And Tatiana just wants some clarification. It's 120 payments and not months.
So it's 120 payments slash 120 months. You can't make more than one payment per month for it to be eligible. So it technically is 120 payments, which really equals to 120 months. However, they are not consecutive months, meaning if you're working for eligible provider, eligible employer, and then you leave, right? And then you go to an employer that isn't eligible, you don't lose that credit. It just stays there. If you come back to a public service employer, the countdown keeps going. So if you had 10 payments, then you just keep going from there. So as long as you are a public service employer, you will continue to get those counts towards your PSLF total credits. I hope that answered your question. I think that answered it.
Yep. And Dwayne asks, I am currently in college and have not started any repayments yet. Do I need to apply at this time?
So if you are currently in college, the questions will be, do you work full time? But if you haven't made any payments, so basically it's a two-part question. If you haven't made any payments, I would still, and you're not working in public service, then this program might not be for you. If you are working in public service but have not made any payments at all, then you might not get any credit through the waiver. If you are a public service employer though, and you want to submit, you may want to submit the PSLF moving forward because you will get credit as you start making those payments. So good question.
Yeah. Jean just had a quick question. Is this recorded? And if so, where will the recording be released?
It is recorded, but I'll let Alexa share where it will be released.
Yeah, we are building a new page on the CT State website, and so all the webinars will be moved over there. If you keep an eye out on the CT State newsletter, we'll be making announcements of when that page is live and when the recording's up. Should be pretty soon though, like within the week, I would imagine.
Yep, thank you, both of you. So John is asking, how can we look up and see what our interest rate is on studentaid.gov to see if the consolidated rate will be higher or lower than their current interest rate?
So there's a consolidation calculator, I believe, that you can find on the studentaid.gov portal, and it'll help you it can help you calculate what your payments may be. So that's a way that you can figure it out. But studentaid.gov should have another tool where you can calculate that.
And Chelsea asks, if you have submitted the PSLF app through fax, how do you know that it has been received? I submitted my app via fax, but haven't received no confirmation.
So that's what we've been hearing on the ground, that people have not been getting confirmation. If you just recently submitted, I mean, we've heard people for months from August who just heard, just may have heard back, right? So the closer you are, depends on when you send it. So if you have not received confirmation yet, we've heard that on the ground a lot. And basically what the federal government is sharing is 90 days, and you'll hear as soon as we can. They've definitely said that they're going to take past October 31st, especially now that the signatures don't have to be in on time, to provide that cancellation. So it might take a little while for you to hear back. We're waiting on more clarity on what happens if there was a mistake or if you need to submit something again. My biggest advice at this moment will be that even though you faxed it in, make sure that you applied using the PSLF help tool. You can actually just download the application and manually fill it in. That does not count towards making sure that it makes it before October 31st. So if you did that and you submitted it, great, but go ahead into the PSLF help tool and re-input the information so that there's a copy saved on that profile for you.
Yep. And Joe asks, how do I know if my wife was a Pell recipient? She is unsure.
Really great question. So if your wife, the way to figure that out is to actually log into studentaid.gov, and just like my presentation sample, there are two semicircles, one in green and one in blue. They usually tell you how many grants you were eligible for in that. If you don't have the green, usually you don't have any grants from our understanding, but you can also call your servicer, but most likely the not studentaid.gov will have that information. It will be the green semicircle.
Yep. And Angela asks, PSLF and consolidation requests were both submitted, but she was denied PSLF because the loans were not direct loans. And should she reapply even though she submitted in August of 2022?
So you submitted in August of 2022, but it was denied because the consolidation didn't go through. Okay, so you want to make sure. So I would say call your servicer to find out why the consolidation was denied. It could be that maybe you picked a wrong repayment plan and they denied that. So I don't know what the reasoning might be, but my guess is that it may have something to do with the consolidation. So what I would say is make sure that PSLF help tool is filled out and generated, right? And then call your servicer to figure out, call the servicer that you consolidated with to figure out why the consolidation was rejected. Now, there are long wait times for the servicer, so just know that. And you can also I think you can also reapply for the consolidation. I would wait on that before try to call your servicer. And I will also say, come to office hours so that we can send that question over to TISLA, the Institute of Student Loan Advisors, because they might know more. They are definitely more experts in those like details, so we can get you a better answer from them. But I would say call your servicer to figure out why the consolidation was denied before the October 31st.
Yep. And Chelsea asks, my student loan servicer is Laurel Road, Mohila. Where on the Mohila website can you submit the PSLF app?
Absolutely. So you're one of the few people like me who is lucky because you don't have to send anything in. You can actually upload your PSLF application using the Mohila dashboard. There's a section in Mohila that says upload documents. So you would upload it there. And they will be able, and you don't have to mail it or fax it in. Another thing that I wanted to share, Mohila definitely has this. I think other servicers do as well. They're actually started adding at the bottom of each of the servicers a tracker. So before they would send you letters, and they might still do that, but at the bottom, at least of Mohila, but I think other servicers as well, there's a tracker. And the tracker says your type of loans, your number of payments, and then the number of qualifying payments. And then usually there's the date of when you can expect cancellation based on the information that they have.
Yep, thank you. And Tatiana asks, do you recommend mailing the forms instead so that we can get the shipper's confirmation of delivery?
So, before the certification change, before you have to get the signature in by October 31st, I would have said fax it, or whatever way in which you can get confirmation. I would say yes, whatever way in which you can get confirmation for the fact that you mailed it, do so. The trick is going to be to generate using the PSLF help tool. You can still mail it, right, and get that confirmation, and then you want to make sure that you save a copy of all the forms for yourself, so in case there's an issue, you don't have to go chasing for a new signature again. So you have a copy of them already. And I will double check, and I'm not sure the answer to this. Sometimes there's you can't do like priority mail, certain things like that. I'm not sure about Mohila. I think the answer is no to that. But you can check and just make sure that however you mail it with that receipt will be received. That there's no exceptions to that.
Yep. And Sandra asks, is Navient a participant in the direct loan?
So Navient, Aid Advantage, all of those folks are all servicers, which basically they have a contract with the federal government where they are in charge of making sure that payments are made, and so they service your account. So they don't hold a public service loan forgiveness program. Mohila does that. But if you are a Navient, if your servicer right now is Navient and you consolidate and get into the PSLF program, 9 times out of 10, they'll transfer you over to Mohila. But yes, Navient it's just a different servicer. There's like 4 or 5 of them. And so all of us are sort of spread among them. But once you get into PSLF, most likely you will get sent over to Mohila. I think that answered your question, but let me know if I didn't.
Yep, and this is kind of related, but Edward asks, if Navient is your servicer, do you need to transfer to Mohila?
You don't have to do that. They will do that for you. So if you have to consolidate, they will consolidate. You will pick Mohila and the consolidation application will get sent to them. If you don't have to consolidate, the public service loan, once you are in the public service loan forgiveness program, 9 times out of 10 on the back end, they will move you over and they will let you know that they did that.
Yep. And let's see. Darshell asks, what if you cannot connect with a previous employer? All leadership has since retired, and does nonprofit organization fall under the public service umbrella?
Yes, really good question. So the second part first, 501c3 nonprofits are absolutely eligible. There are other non-501c3 nonprofits that are eligible, but you'll have to go into the search tool to determine that, to the help tool to determine if that is the case for that particular employer. If you're a union, if you work for a union, you're not eligible because that's a C4. But C3s are relatively eligible. C3s are eligible for PSLF. And Yolanda, can you repeat the first part of that question?
Yeah, so Darshell is asking, what if you cannot connect with a previous employer because all their previous leadership has since retired?
Awesome. That's a really good question. So there is an option in the application that says employer is refusing to or cannot verify my employment. Click that. What they'll do, and I believe, and this I'll have to double check, but I believe the answer is they'll verify using your taxes. Don't quote me on that. That might be wrong, but there is an option that says my employer cannot or will not certify my employment, and you can click on that. And they'll be able to, and they'll sort of, in the back end, they'll navigate through that.
Yep, super helpful. And Omar is asking, who is responsible for calculating qualifying payments? And that's his first question.
Yeah, so who's responsible is Mohila. So Mohila, once your application gets submitted, Mohila will look at your loans, will look at your payment history, and they will determine which out of all of those are eligible for PSLF, provided that you meet the criteria. So ultimately, it's Mohila who will do all of the counting for eligible payments.
Yep. And his follow-up question is, how do we check to see if the calculation was done correctly?
That's a very good question. So we had a borrower. This answer I probably will say I would want to get further information from Tisla because that's a good question that I don't really fully know the answer to. My guess is that you can probably look at your repayment history. We had a borrower, part of our members, who created an Excel spreadsheet with all of her payments, right? History, and sort of went one by one because she was having some errors as well. So that's a way to do it. Compare your records to their records. But I probably can get you a better answer from Tisla because that's sort of what I think. But I think there might be better answers through Tisla. So if you reach out to us, we can connect you with them to see if there's anything that I missed or if maybe what I said was wrong or there's other ways to do so.
Yep. And John is asking, do 501c3 churches count as eligible employers?
Yep, they do. 501c3. You can read more at studentaid.gov about clergy. What there might be there might be like a limitation on, I think, hours that you spent, and there used to be a limitation. I'm not sure if it's still there. The overall though, the answer is yes. If you're a 501c3 and you're a clergy or you work for a church, that's definitely included. But just go on the website at studentaid.gov, look at their FAQ sheet and double check. There's one question that directly addresses that.
Yeah, and so Chelsea says, so Mohila is the provider for my private loans, not my PSLF eligible loans. Can I still submit the form through Mohila?
That's a good, so you always submit the form to Mohila, no matter if Mohila is your servicer or not. all PSLF applications are going to get sent to Mohila. The question is, well, can you upload it into your dashboard is the question, because everyone has to send it to Mohila, but you might be able to upload it because you already have an account with them. So I would say go into your portal to see if there's an option to upload PSLF applications so that you can upload it. But I want to reinforce that all of you, regardless of who your servicer is, your application goes to Mohila, either by fax or by mail.
Yep. And Sandra asks, what if you consolidated your loan with Navient years ago? How do I know what qualifies as a federal loan?
Ooh, good question. So the easiest way to check what's a federal loan and what isn't is cross-referencing what you see at studentaid.gov under view loan details versus what you see on your Navient dashboard. Usually you'll be able to see some of them, like we had just a borrower who had some loans in studentaid.gov and not others in their servicer website. So 9 times out of 10, you can cross-reference what's at studentaid.gov, which are your federal loans, versus what's in your Navient account. You can also click on details, and usually in the details, it'll tell you who the grantor is, and it'll give you a little bit more of information. And you can usually go from there. But if it's in studentaid.gov, it's usually a federal loan. But if it's in Navient and not at studentaid.gov, that usually means private loans. And that's when it can be a little confusing because servicers are both servicing your federal loans, but they're also able to give you private loans. So you want to make sure. First, check out studentaid.gov, cross-reference that with your Navient account, and then for more information, you can click on the details of each of your Navient accounts, and it should give you a breakdown of what they are.
Yep. And so Khadija asks, you've mentioned that Biden's forgiveness Perkins loans don't qualify unless you've consolidated prior to September 29th of 2022. So if you didn't consolidate before then, does that mean you won't be eligible to get anything forgiven, such as the federal direct loans?
Okay, so good questions. I want to make sure I clarify here. The only loan that you're not, the only folks who are not eligible for the Biden 1020 cancellation are people who held commercially owned FFEL loans. So if you had a commercially owned FFEL loan, you did not consolidate before September 29th, then you are not eligible as of right now for the Biden cancellation. This is a change. We learned about it on the same day. That was not great. We learned about it on the same day that they changed the ruling. But if you have a commercially held FFEL loan and you did not consolidate before that September 29th, you wouldn't be eligible for the 1020 cancellation from Biden, but you might still be eligible for PSLF. We can give you more information on the differences between FFEL loans that are commercially owned and federally owned. It's an older federal program, and so the federal government owns half of them, so they are federal loans. And there are some who are still held by commercial lenders, even though they are guaranteed by the federal government. You may know if you have those FFEL loans, and one of the ways to know that is if you have not been able to take part in the pause. Most FFEL loan holders commercially owned FFEL loan holders have had to pay during the pause because they're not really federal. They are federal loans, but they're not federal loans. A little tricky, but yeah.
Yeah, and Khadija has a follow-up question. Is a Perkins loan a commercially owned or commercially held FFEL loan?
I don't know the answer to that. I think because I know that sometimes FFEL Perkins altogether. I don't know the answer to that. What I would say is go to studentaid.gov and see what you see under, and you can also come to our office hours and we'll be able to work with you independently to sort of see what's on your studentaid.gov portal. But that's a good question. I don't know the answer right away.
Yeah, and so Elijah asks, what if you are a clergy member and are not on payroll? So technically, if someone serves in a ministerial position but doesn't receive a W-2 or doesn't receive compensation, are they still eligible?
That's a good question. I don't think I've had that question before. I don't know the answer to that, and so I don't want to answer it wrong. I would say reach out to us and we'll ask that question to TSLA. You can send us an email at info@slfnh.org. info@slfnh.org. And we'll pass that information over to TSLA and they'll be able to answer you better.
Yep, and I dropped that email into the chat if anyone needs it. So next is John's question. Studentaid.gov says that FFEL consolidation loans can only be consolidated under certain conditions. Do you know what the conditions are?
I would say that's another instance where I will say go to the office hours so we can get more information. I don't want to answer off the top of my head because I don't know it directly and I don't want to give you the wrong information. So say go to the office hours, we can get you an answer or we can find it at studentaid.gov with you. Good question.
I'm gonna pop into because we have hit 3 o'clock, and there probably are a few more questions, but I wanted to encourage everyone to reach out to Edwin if it's something like related to educate, like something that would be more that has more to do with CSU and CT State. I know there's a question there about contact hours and adjunct faculty and stuff, so that might be better suited to Edwin. But otherwise, we have all the contact information for SLF, and we can reach out to them directly, and they'll be able to give us a hand. And I wanted to thank you, Cristher and Yolanda and Edwin, all for being here and educating on this. This is exciting. Hopefully we'll all be able to get some debt written off. That'd be a great solution. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you all for attending. Please feel free to reach out. This has been recorded. It will be on the webinar page. Keep an eye out on CT State News. We'll be posting where it is. The Q&As will also at some point be written up and typed out also. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Great to be here.
Bye. Thank you.